This story begins in a quiet corner of Seoul, in the neighborhood of the city where we're going to go with you today. On Wanga, imagine December 2020. Cold air wafts through the narrow streets. The smell of Korean street food fills the neighborhood, and the lights of Christmas decorations create an atmosphere of anticipation for the new year. Inside one of the local buildings glows a cozy PC bar, a place where you can drink beer, play games, and just relax with friends. Behind the computers sit people of all ages, each immersed in their own virtual world. But among them, there is one girl who stands out with her focused yet contented gaze. This is Ari, a young girl who, enjoying her favorite pastime, plays computer games with a smile. Her name isn't really Ari. I gave her this name because of the specifics of crime investigations in South Korea, where they almost never reveal the real name of the victims, but only the letter A. So for convenience and respect for her identity, we will call her Ari. Now the club is her sanctuary, her little world where she could forget about all the problems of real life. Ari is a 25-year-old girl. Her life may seem ordinary at first glance. She works, meets with friends, and in the evenings, she loves to go to the local computer club, where she spends long hours playing her favorite games. She has made many friends both locally and online, and her attraction to computer games has become an important part of her life. One of her favorite games was League of Legends. Christmas 2020 was approaching. There was a festive atmosphere in the air, and the lights decorated Seoul, turning it into a real Christmas fairy tale. Ari decided to meet up with friends with whom she often played online games. That evening, there were not only her old acquaintances, but also new faces that she had already met in the game. Among these new faces was a young man named Kim Dae-hyun. Dae-hyun was a year younger than Ari. He was 24. At first glance, he was an ordinary young man. He didn't stand out from the rest. Nothing in his appearance or behavior raised suspicions or concerns. But as soon as the new 21-year-old began to hit his stride, things began to change and Taehyun's dark side began to show. After a few similar encounters with friends together, Kim began to show special attention to Ari, which soon turned into feelings. However, as you might have guessed, Arya didn't share those feelings. She simply could not reciprocate him, and so her communication with Kim gradually began to weigh on her. At first, he would just look at her awkwardly and try to start a conversation. But as time went on, Taehyun became more insistent. Ari began to feel uncomfortable in his presence, and that sense of unease grew each time they met. What had once seemed like harmless sympathy began to turn into something frightening. The man couldn't handle the rejection. His emotions began to turn to endurance mixed with rage and frustration. This kind of reaction could be due to accumulated failures in Kim's life, lack of support or loneliness. But listen further, you will understand. For Ari, communicating with him became an ordeal because of his obsession. She could feel his tension and insistent stares that became increasingly disturbing. Kim was constantly trying to impose his attention on her without accepting her rejections, and understandably this caused her fear and even a sense of danger. These moments, when she felt her personal space was being violated, and when each new contact with him brought her more and more discomfort, became unbearable. Ari had decided to avoid seeing him, trying to stay away. But he wasn't going to just walk away. He started stalking her, in online games, on social media, and then in real life. The world that had been Ari's salvation, her virtual reality, was now a dangerous place for her with nowhere to hide. Ari was forced to block Taehyun everywhere she could. She deleted him from his friends in League of Legends and blocked all of his social media accounts. But even after that, the nightmare didn't stop. Kim found new ways to get to her. He used payphones, the ones on the street, to call her anonymously. He left threatening voicemails, regularly showed up at her favorite computer club to spy on her. And finally, Ari decided to change her phone number, hoping that at least it would help her find some peace of mind. But Taehyun wasn't the type to give up easily. His obsession had become simply painful and threatening. He found her number again and continued his attacks. Social media, which had been Arya's source of communication and connection to the world, was now her bane. As soon as she blocked one of his profiles, Taehyung would create another and continue to monitor her, sending endless messages, calls, threats, watching her every move. Ari was trapped in a trap from which there seemed to be no way out. Kim Dae-hyun, a man who at first glance seemed quite ordinary, as I said, actually had some disturbing signs in his past that could foreshadow his future behavior. But to others, he was just a young man who loved computers and games. He started working at a computer club at the age of 19. After dropping out of college, the job was routine and simple, troubleshooting and helping visitors. But even then it could be seen that his life was not on the best path. In 19, Taehyun was drafted into the army for a mandatory 2-year service. In South Korea, military service is a mandatory step that any 18-year-old has to go through, just like in Russia. However, for Kim, this service did not bring the change that was expected of him. When he returned 2 years later, he found no purpose or desire to start something new. Instead, he settled back into his old job. Some time passed, and soon the administrator noticed one curious thing. Money began to disappear from the cash register of the computer club. Then the owner checked the CCTV footage and found out that the thief was none other than our Taehyun. You'd think the owner of the place would have gone to the police and filed a report against him, but no. He thought that there's no telling what kind of situation the guy might be in, so he just kicked him out without ruining the young man's life. However, the doors of this place still closed forever for him. After he was kicked out, Taehyun began to isolate himself more and more from society. He became estranged from his friends who continued to gather there, and gradually their communication stopped altogether, and soon rumors began to creep among the company and his acquaintances about his strange behavior. People said that he was becoming withdrawn, and some claimed that he was showing signs of aggression and violent tendencies. These rumors quickly spread among his entourage, and soon everyone knew that Kim was best not to be messed with. Yes, that's how Korean society works. In June of 1919, the situation escalated. Kim was fined a large sum of money for stalking another man on social media. He sent him intrusive messages, threatening texts, and generally behaved very strangely, which forced the victim to contact the police. This case should have been a warning to Kim, a signal that he had gone too far and it was time to stop. But unfortunately, this sign went unnoticed. He didn't draw any conclusions and didn't change his behavior. On the contrary, Taehyun continued on a dangerous spiral leading him downward. His obsession and aggression only intensified, and his control over his own actions grew weaker and weaker. In the summer of that year, Taehyun allegedly entered a women's public restroom with the intent to sexually harass, for which he was again fined a substantial sum. Then he was fined again, this time for sending obscene messages to schoolgirl. Each new incident seemed to make him more and more dangerous and unpredictable. Can you feel the atmosphere heating up? There was nothing left of the man who once seemed quite normal and unremarkable. He became just a menace whose dark side was gradually revealed to the world. And that's when he met Ari. Her rejection, her attempts to shut him out, had been the last straw for him. He created a new account on League of Legends and found her again, this time pretending to be a different person. He watched her activity, knew her schedule, knew when she played, when she slept, when she was home. He became her shadow, became someone who was impossible to get rid of. But the real tragedy and trigger was when Ari accidentally left a picture in one of her posts with the address on a package she received. It was just an inattentive moment, but it was the one that cost her her life. Taehyun found out where she lived and began planning something terrible. His obsession had taken over, and now he was ready to cross a line that could not be crossed. Police would later discover that in March of 21, Kim began searching the internet for information on how to kill someone quickly and where to hide after committing the crime. He packed a backpack in which he put a change of clothes, gloves, and several types of weapons, and dressed in black and headed to Ari's house. At this point, his mind seemed to have completely lost touch with reality, and his only goal was revenge. 17 to 13, the security camera caught him in the very same computer club. He walked around the room as if looking for someone, but not finding the right person. He left after a few minutes. He then went to the supermarket where he bought another gun before heading to Ari's house. 17:35, 20 minutes later, Kim entered the building pretending to be a delivery man and went up to Ari's floor. He knocked on the door pretending to be a courier and heard a voice asking him to leave the package at the door. Then he pretended to leave, but he didn't. He remained waiting at the door, lurking in the shadows. A few minutes later, the door opened and on the doorstep was Ari's younger sister, who was only 22 years old. Kim rushed inside and the knife glinted in his hands, ending the innocent girl's life. Shishina shrouded the house, the evening sinking into night. There was complete silence, broken only by the distant sounds of the city. At 10:31 p.m. he heard someone walking down the hall. A few seconds later, Ari's mother appeared in the doorway. Before she even realized what had happened, Taeyun had struck a blow, taking her life. An hour later, Ari herself returned. Taeyun let her admire all that he had done, and the girl had not even had time to recover before her life was cut short at that point. Everything happened so quickly that she, according to the words of the criminal, did not even have time to realize the horror of what was happening. For 3 days, Tacheon stayed in the apartment with the bodies of his victims. It's amazing that he didn't seem to be in any hurry to leave or hide. All the while, he ate their food, drank their drinks as if it were his own place. Every now and then, he even tried to zero in, but he lacked the determination to follow through, and he continued to live among the dead as if nothing had happened. All this time, no one suspected that something terrible was going on in the apartment, until finally the police, concerned by calls from Ari's friends, came to check the apartment. On March 26, the police found 3 dead bodies of Atekon alive among them. It was a shock to everyone, to neighbors, to friends, to everyone who knew Ari. The man was hospitalized, but his injuries turned out to be minor. He was discharged a week later and immediately arrested. During a search of his apartment, police found a mess, broken items, documents thrown in the trash. His life was literally in shambles, and he wasn't even trying to hide it. All indications were that he had long since lost control of his life. At his first hearing in June 21st, Kim pleaded guilty to all 5 charges: murder, theft, trespassing, disorderly conduct, and online threats. Because South Korea still applies the death penalty in rare cases, Kim can expect the death penalty. Although he claimed that the murder of Ari's sister and mother was an accident and he didn't even plan it, those words were hard to take seriously. All because the 3 girls were found with knife wounds to the neck. His actions clearly showed that he knew what he was doing and was trying to cover his tracks. And by the way, this whole incident in Seoul changed South Korea. You know how? Just a few weeks after this murder, the South Korean authorities decided to tighten measures against stalking. Until then, stalking people was considered a minor offense that could only be punished with a small fine or a short jail term. But now the law has been tightened to the point where those who stalk other people can get up to 5 years in prison and up to $40,000 in fines. Still, however, the move still came too late for Ari and her family. Ari did everything she could to get rid of the stalker, but she failed to completely get away from this psychopath. Her fatal mistake was accidentally revealing her address, which was the final thread that led to tragedy. And it's even hard to predict. I doubt she could have even contemplated that some sick computer club type would zoom in on the photo, look at her address on it, and come to see her. So what became of him in the end? Kim Tae-hyun remains behind bars. Meanwhile, Ari's family continues to fight for justice, demanding the ultimate punishment for him, the death penalty. If you like this story, subscribe to the channel and give it a like.